Hey everybody, welcome to the very first drive-through board game blog. This is for Thursday, April 18th, 2013. I'm probably going to do one of these every Thursday. We'll kind of see how it goes and then kind of settle in on a schedule there. I just want to kind of break up the format of doing my reviews. So normally I do a review of about a specific game in detail. So I got like 5 or 6 topics lined up definitely for the next few weeks, as well as some other ideas kicking around. But any feedback, stuff you want to hear about, banter back and forth about in the comments, then please let me know. Also, this will give me a chance to play around with my video editing stuff, kind of how the formatting of my videos is going to work. So if you have any feedback regarding that, then please let me know there as well. So enough of that. Let's jump into my top 5 games for 2013 so far. So the number 5 game on the list is the Great Heartland Hauling Company from Dice Hate Me Games. I haven't done a full review of this yet. I definitely will in the near future. It's a great little compact game. It plays 2 to 4 players. Basically, you're driving your trucks around, you're picking up goods, you're dropping off goods. You've got to spend fuel cards to move around, you've got to spend cash to move around. On its surface, it's a very simple game. It's kind of like Ticket to Ride. You've got sort of a deck of cards you're pulling from, trying to build sets. But the game is super configurable. You can arrange different maps, different layouts. You can flip the cards over on the other side to sort of add a little roadblocks and toll booths and things like that you have to deal with. There's a little built-in expansion where you can add special abilities for the different trucks to help you sort of break the rules of the game. There's just a ton of game packed into this little box. And the thing that I like most about it is you can really sort of exploit that row of goods cards and the fuel cards, especially with a lesser number of players. You can really kind of drive that and sort of manipulate that a lot more than I think you normally can, with these types of games that are pick up and deliver and have that sort of Ticket to Ride feel to it. The number 4 game on the list is ILVECCHIO from Pegasus Spiel and Tasty Minstrel Games. This is kind of a throwback Euro. It kind of reminds me of some of the Euros, came out sort of last decade, earlier in the decade. It's got some really wonky mechanics, some strange sort of route mechanics, lots of ways to score, lots of special abilities. There's a lot to consider on the board, so there's a lot of sort of paths to victory in that whole thing. The board is kind of ugly, and the pieces are kind of ugly. There's a lot of icons on the different special ability tiles, but there's a lot of interesting things you can do with pacing and sort of driving the end of the game. And it's not a game with a fixed number of rounds. The end of the game is going to be driven by the player actions and what they do. So the pacing and the end of the game approaching is something you've got to keep in mind as you're trying to score all these different bonus points. And there's a lot of ways to kind of set yourself up for big turns or a big sequence of turns. So you've got to keep all of that in mind, as well as an eye towards when the game's going to end and the current pace of the game. And it keeps the game interesting throughout. It's a nice 90-minute Euro, and again, it's kind of a throwback. It's a Rudiger Dorn game. He did Goa and a couple other games like that. I really like it. It's a very fun game. Number 3 game on the list is New Amsterdam. This is from White Goblin Games. It takes place during the Dutch West Indies Trading Company. Basically, the Dutch are coming over. They're sort of driving the Indians back from their native lands, and they're trying to establish their own sort of economic little central town area. And it's got a really interesting auction mechanic for basically the action tiles that are going to be available to you, and all the actions really make a lot of thematic sense. As you take up land, you're going to be driving the Indians back, but you're also going to be wanting to trade with the Indians, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to trade with them as the land's kind of being gobbled up. But you're also trying to maintain dominance in the central town area to get a lot of points that way during the game. So one of the most interesting parts of the game is how you auction for those action tiles. Now, when you auction for them, you can use anything to bid. You can use gold, you can use corn, fur pelts, goods, whatever. So everything is basically worth 1 gold or 1 point during the auction, but they all have their own intrinsic value during the different phases of the game and depending on what stage of the game is in. So I like that the value sort of arises out of the player actions and the player sort of read on what everything's worth in the game. It's a nice break from turning cubes into other cubes, turning them into other cubes, and just turning them into victory points. You get a real sort of nice thematic sense out of each of the items and what their sort of purpose is in this little world within this game. So this is an excellent game. It's a little bit hard to find currently, but it's not terribly difficult to find. I would highly recommend anybody that is interested in this to try it out. Which brings us to the number 2 game, which is Clash of Cultures. This is actually very difficult between this one and the number 1 game, but Clash of Cultures is just a fantastic civilization game. I could go on and on about all the different little design decisions that I think are just fantastic. You've got the action cards, you've got the various buildings that snap together nicely to form these full-born sort of metropolis centers. And of course you got your huge technology tree board. Various little special abilities and little paths through all the different trees that you can experiment with and play with over multiple plays. I've done a couple of videos on this one already, and I would definitely recommend this. Anyone that wants to jump in, mix it up with the other players. It's got lots of combat, but it's also got a lot of the other things that make it such a great civilization game. I can't talk enough about those action cards that you get throughout the game, and it will kind of give you little hints and clues and ways that you can kind of exploit your civilization to get the maximum amount of points. It's going to cause the game to play a lot differently each time you play it, and depending on how you get those action cards, and also the the actions and reactions of all the different players, how the boards come out. Again, I could talk forever about this one. Each specific mechanic and design decision is just really spot on for me. And that brings me to my favorite game so far in 2013. That's Bora by Stefan Feld. This game, if you live in the United States, is going to be very difficult to find. I've done a video on it. There's a few other really great walkthrough videos on it on Board Game Geek, but I just can't get enough of this game. This one to me is very subtle. I've had some discussion with folks that they think that the task tiles are a little bit sort of like makes you play on rails, but I think they're actually in a way a trick. I think yes, you want to complete them, but you definitely do not want them dominating everything that you do and every decision that you make. You really want to pursue a nice smart selection of the men and women tiles. Let those kind of enhance your strategy and in a way kind of dictate your strategy as well through your choice of those tiles. This is another game that I could go on and on about each mechanic. But one of the cool, interesting sort of mechanical themes of this game is this sort of duality. So in this game there's a bonus action called a fire action. It gives you two choices. You can get a card or an offering. Well, you need the offerings to play the cards. Another choice you get is you can get a tattoo, which is kind of like influence, or you can get a shell. Well, you want the tattoo or the influence to move up the turn order track, and it's important to move up the turn order track so that you can buy jewelry, which is what the shells are for. Another example is when you place your dice for the actions. You can either place the die on the tile with a 6, and you're going to be able to do a whole bunch of different things or have a better choice or better selection of whatever you're trying to do, or you can put a 1 on there. You don't have a whole lot of choice, but you've also made it life horrible for everybody else if they want to take that action. So in a sense you're thinking, am I going to limit myself and everybody else, or am I going to give myself choice but I'm giving everybody else choice? So a lot of the decisions are exactly like this in the game, where they're basically at cross purposes throughout the entire game. And again, that's very indicative of a Stefan Feld game. But in Bora, the timing of those decisions seems to be really the most important part of the game. Turn order is always good, but it's going to be maximally better for me in turn 3, say, versus turn 4 or something like that. And you're always going to be giving up something, but you just have to decide when am I going to get my full potential out of whatever I'm going to choose to do. I know that's all very abstract and sounds very Euro-y, and it is, but you kind of compare this one to Trajan, and in Trajan and somewhat Castles of Burgundy, you're kind of picking and choosing and grabbing points here and there. But in Bora, in each of the different areas and the different aspects of the game, you're directly competing against other players for access to whatever that is. Whether it's the huts on the board, the men and women tiles, the priest track, the turn order track, the jewelry tiles, everything you do in this game is going to directly affect and knock out the other players. So in those other games like Trajan and Burgundy, you're kind of back up, you're kind of looking at everything at a high level, you're picking and choosing your points and trying to get whatever you can. But in Bora, you kind of are into the game more. You're in there close, you're trying to knock the other guy, throw an elbow, throw a punch, and take stuff directly from them. And I think that is different. So it's kind of like Trajan and Burgundy in a sense. There's a lot of ways to score points, but it's directly focused at other players in the game, and that is what sets it apart, I think. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this this little experiment here. I'm going to do a few more of these at least, and so any feedback you have on the formatting and different things, like I know I do everything in black and white here because I honestly don't have a shelf of board games or anything cool to really do. So black and white supposedly makes people just listen to what I'm saying as opposed to looking at me or whatever. But if you have any ideas for any of that format, topic ideas, anything, if anybody has any ideas or just wants to talk about something or whatever and say, why do you hate this game or why do you like this game or whatever the thing is going to be, give me your top 5 worker placement games, I don't know, whatever it is. So I've got the new next 5 topics to come up, and so they're not set in stone though. If somebody comes up with something cool, then I'll just do that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.